So what we're here to do today, and what we hope translates, is that we want allies to get behind Indigenous people. Performing culture is not what it's about. Culture is already in place. We need to get behind it. The allies who are brought in on the front lines started by listening and taking direction. They've got 4 camps going right now. They have the Camp of the Sacred Stones. The Sacred Stones was named that because that's the actual name of the site, traditionally. It was started by the Lakota people. In late March, it was officially established on April 1st. They saw this coming. They knew for a long time that there were ancestral remains, sacred sites, including rock formations, prayer sites, ceremonial grounds, and ancestors buried in the way of this pipeline. They were aware of that a long time. They have the Red Warrior Camp. That's kind of like a late 20s, mid 30s group that's responsible for all the tech. So all the stuff that you're seeing online, it's done by them. They're flying drones, they're photographing everything, they're making videos. Some of them are on horses. In direct action of defense. They're defenders and protectors. Then you have the younger generation of runners who've been doing runs for the water. And then you've got a camp for the collaborators and the allies and people of other tribal nations who are all together in these 4 camps on this land. So all of this is being leveraged on the back of a treaty. And if you're not familiar with treaty law is supposed to be held as the highest law of the land. It has federal power. It's equal to federal laws and powers. It surpasses state power and militarization. It is equal to federal law. And the people there were put on the land and secured on that land in 1868 by the Fort Laramie Treaty. And that treaty stated that the tribe will enjoy undisturbed use and occupation of their homeland. Use and occupation includes culture. Undisturbed use and occupation includes the ones who've passed away. It doesn't say living or deceased, or so-called deceased. The ancestors in the ground are members of that community. And by treaty law, they're allowed to occupy that land undisturbed. That's been violated with the initiative of the pipeline. Period. It's looked at over. When they sent out bulldozers on April 4th, they ruined sacred sites. So the occupation on that land, the use of that land was disrupted. They dredged up sacred sites. And they disturbed the ancestors. But here's the key. They acted in an ancestral way themselves. Because 153 years earlier, on the same date, in the Whitestone so-called battle, but it was a massacre, over 300 indigenous relatives of those people north in North Dakota were killed, wounded, or held captive. So this treaty is more like a symbolic gesture for people who are being held as prisoners of war, essentially. They don't have the use of their homelands or the occupation of the homelands in the way that they want. These protections were put in place so they could culturally be who they are, and it was taken away. That's violation number 1, with several subcomponents in it. Violation number 2, Executive Order 12898. Environmental justice. All agencies must determine if the proposed project disproportionately impacts tribal communities or other minority communities. That is, if they're going to have a project, they have to give leeway to people who have minority status or tribal status. The pipeline was supposed to be put initially through Bismarck. They moved it down south because there was less people. They've been disproportionately affected, so that executive order has been violated. The Pipeline Safety Act and Clean Water Act says that the projected damage has to be clearly articulated in the emergency plan. The exact amount of potential spill has to be clearly articulated. That has not been released, so they're in violation of that act. The National Environmental Policy Act requires that the environmental impact statement be done with detailed impacts before the Corps of Engineers can release a permit. And that was not done. It was sidestepped. They did minimal investigation. The DAPL sent out people to survey the land. They said there were no burials and no ceremonial sites. The Standing Rock Lakota community sent out people to survey the site, and they found burials, of course, which they knew were already there. Executive Order 13007 on the protection of sacred sites states that in managing federal lands, each executive branch agency shall avoid adversely affecting the physical integrity of such sites. The Lakotas there have gone ahead and petitioned to register that site as a sacred site, which they've always known was there. The action that we saw on April 4th was a result of people's response to that, which is to hurry up and build and start digging. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen the footage online. Once they started dredging over these sites, defenders and protectors stood in the way. Women and children, warriors, people on horse, people on foot, and tried to stop the dozers. At which point, some of the construction workers tackled these people, pushed them to the ground. The dozers retreated. They came out with attack dogs brought in by a company I believe in Ohio, and mace, and started macing and attacking people, catching a lot of slack up in their hands, getting the dogs up close and letting them loose so they bit people. A toddler was bitten in the face by one of these dogs because of this. We've kept our agreements. We've tried to keep our agreements. The Standing Rock people have kept their agreements with integrity. They've done it with integrity. They're not doing anything radical. They're doing what's required by law in resisting. So what can we do is the question on everyone's mind. If you can't go there, if you've got kids, if you have obligations that you have to live up to, you want to be a good ally, you want to be a good friend, undo the ancestral behavior that's going on here. Change it. Change your own ancestry. Everyone's ancestors are speaking. The land's been turned up, the old ones are speaking. The people are following their directions, but there's other people on the front lines following their ancestors' directions, and they need to stop it and put an end to it. We can all create a new legacy here. Running this here and putting this together is a great thing. It's good to see all your faces, but it's a daunting thing. How many Native people are in the audience? Minority people, right? So they say. But what I see is everyone behind them. Get your ancestry behind them. Correct it. Change your behavior. Support them. The natives in my family show that they love each other. They show it through action, through the way they behave, through giving respect, and not wearing each other out and giving each other support.